Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. We're going to start the meeting at, where's the time? 3:06. I am Trudy Newberry, Vice Chair, standing in for our Chair, Mr. Richie Blank. He is delayed due to the ferry. So we're going to start the meeting with a roll call. And Richie's on his way. Is Mr. LaFrance absent? So it's 7 yea attendance and 2 absent. Okay, the prayer, who says the prayer? Do I have the prayer? It was on top of Mr. Blink's. Sorry. Yeah. I'll read it. Okay. All right, we'll start with the prayer. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that is right, which is right. Amen. Amen. All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, there's no executive session today, and we'll go to the status report by the Executive Board Director, Mr. Sanders.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. Follows is my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 13 November to 9 December. During this time frame, we conducted budget workshop meetings as well as the budget hearing. The 2021 budget hearing was held on 17 November. The 2021 budget will be voted on today with approved amendments. The updated budget will be available early February on the Port's website and public parish libraries. We have arranged 2 update sessions for our board members regarding the Plaquemines Liquid Terminal. Sign-up emails are forthcoming, but tentatively meetings will be arranged via Microsoft Teams platform on 18 December at 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. Just this morning, we had an in-depth discussion with Belinda Hazel, the parish tax assessor, regarding the port's present stance in applying for FTZ designation. This is an item on today's agenda, so we can save our discussion for then. Upon Councilman Roussel's request for a port development update, we are looking at dates to do just that. Things are moving very quickly, so your request is very timely. We gave a very quick update to the chair and vice chair on Monday, but a highly expanded version is being readied. Forey Musser, the top engineer with Venture Global, will be on hand next Tuesday, 15 December. I believe he has set appointments with members of the board. He will be meeting with us at 13:30. If anyone would like to see him, does not have an appointment, let me know. And lastly, before we depart for the holiday season, I wanted to let my staff know that y'all are the best, and to all here, have a very safe and Merry Christmas in the holiday season. And also our friends in the audience. Thank you. Madam Vice Chairman, subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Sandy. I also want to let the board know that in our Monday meeting, we had a about a 30-minute Zoom meeting with J.D. Russell, the procurement that was passed earlier this year. And it was a very productive meeting. They're moving forward with phases with the faculty. And also, they also just want, and I'm mentioning this because they want to let us know that they're going to start meeting with us the first of next year to go over policies, anything that they feel like that needs to be changed on our end. So be looking for that, those appointments with the procurement team come January and February. So, but thank you, Mr. Sanders, and I think we have someone that wants to speak.
Yes. Am I on?
Mr. Russo.
Yes. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the rail presentation that was given to the Rotary Club earlier this week in your report today.
Mr. Roussel, with your permission, I'd rather that go to the board when we get this update, and I will get those dates out to you very quickly. But you're right, that is a good news story, but I think the board needs to be apprised of it. That is part of the port development.
Well, I guess my point is that since you presented it to the Rotary Club, it's on the street, and we haven't been informed of it. It's kind of like...
I hit very highly on the high tops of the rail. I did not go into much detail.
Well, my point is that it's more detail than we're getting, but I'll yield and wait till the meeting and just listen to what I hear on the street. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to follow up with that, and Mr. Sanders, I guess before you give a presentation out to other members of the public, maybe you can express it to us first, just so we know what's out there, and I think that's what Mr. Russo is trying to say. We like to be informed before someone from the Rotary's informed, so just make a note of that for next time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I agree with Mr. Roussel.
Okay. Next in line is Mr. Kognovich.
Yeah, I want to go back to the artifacts because I wanted to make a schedule appointment to go see them. Couldn't do it. Then I started doing some research on it on my own. I contacted Walter Hanno, who did some of the digging, and he contacted our historian to get a map of the site and all. So I called him, said he couldn't talk to me about none of it because we don't own the property. PLT owns it. I told him that Plaquemines Parish owns the property, and he still wouldn't talk to me about it. But
Okay. Yeah,
that site was a St. Rosalie plantation. It was a black-owned plantation. Sold it around 1880. Had slaves in a slave graveyard. And out of them 12,000 artifacts, I heard they had human remains found in it. So that's why we wanted to hurry up and get it to UNO so nobody would find that.
no, because I sent all the remains to the entire board months prior to actually voting on it. So all of you had the list of remains of the artifacts. But as I sent a voicemail to you, I believe a week or so ago, I'm waiting on Mr. Gray to provide me dates. He's still getting some information from the PLT team, and he's finishing up the curation. And once he's ready to give me some dates, I was gonna, like I told you in the voicemail, I'll send to you. If you like, I'll reach back out to him today and see if he's got those dates ready yet.
Because why is PLT in it? They don't own the property.
Right. That's why we're the ones had to be responsible for making sure they get curated, because it's not PLT's responsibility. It was ours because, we own the land. And so all that information of all the list of artifacts was sent to the entire board. I can resend it to you if you like, sir.
I'd like it resent because
Okay.
I didn't see it.
No, not a problem. We'll send that to you. And like I said in my voicemail, as soon as he comes back with some dates, I'll get them to you, and I'll make sure I do another email to him to request those dates.
I think we ought to explain it to the people who did the digging and UNO that we own the property, and if I got a question, it should be answered.
Right. Absolutely. I'll make that clear in my email, and I will CC the entire board on my next email.
Thank you.
Mr. Bartholomew?
I don't have anything.
All right, Barb, what's next?
Discussion on the executive calendar, Commissioner Roussel.
Am I on?
You got a can, please.
Am I on?
Ken.
This is an old story, been waiting on results. The calendar's the same. I'm not on.
It says he's on.
I got it.
Am I on now?
Yes, sir.
So I'm just asking, have you made any progress on the calendar issue?
Mr. Roussel, I have bounced what is being put on the calendar with the resolution. Oh, my glasses. With the resolution of number 20-100. And I would say that we are complying with everything on there. And if there's something that you think we're not complying with, please bring it to my attention, because we have worked diligently to provide not only what is required, but even gone overboard and then tried to put in some things without compromising non-disclosure agreements, just so you know that we are working on those things. So what precisely is it that you feel that we're not complying with?
You're not complying with the fact that we're getting all the same information. I had the vice chairman in my office and compared her calendar to the calendar that I have, and they're totally different. I have calendars printed out for months on end, and they haven't changed. They are continuing to be a repetition of events that I believe are either canceled or not happening, and new items are not being added to the calendar as far as my review. And, you know, it's getting to be where I feel like I'm being petty about this, but it's not happening. And I believe that it's important that we should all be on the same page.
And I agree, and that does make me raise my eyebrows, and that's got to be an IT issue, because everyone is subject to that executive calendar, and what you should be seeing is the same thing that all the other councilmen are seeing. So I will take that to issue. I'll run it to ground, get IT to look at it, but it might be y'all's IT, but if that's whatever it is, no one's getting any special data that anyone else is not getting. And we do make a hard copy that we do send to Mr. Konovich. So I'll take that as a due out to see. I mean, we had IT glitches before, as you know, but that should not be happening. Everyone has the same data. Everyone should have the same data.
Can Mr. Russo, Mr. Kognovich gets a weekly calendar. Can Mr. Russo get one also? Can y'all just copy him on every Monday morning?
Madam Chair, the calendar is also on the shared drive now, so everybody has access to that.
Okay.
I'd like to remind everyone that in early October, an email was sent by Harold Sherman, who's the only person that handles the calendar for the port. And she told all the board members, she sent the email saying that I understand that some board members are having problems viewing everything on the calendar. And so she asked if anybody was having problems, that any of the board members would invite her to come to their office and she can help troubleshoot. That was sent in October. I can resend that email to show everyone, but the offer still stands.
Well, as far as that goes, you know, I've had this on the agenda for months and months now. If you don't know that there's a problem there, then you're not paying attention to the item on the agenda, because I print these calendars out as I see them. I compare them to the vice chairman's calendar, and they're totally different. And we had the IT people come in my office already, and we had discussions about it being correct. Now, I don't have to go into the new year, you know, discussing a simple calendar. When we're supposedly logistics experts, we're supposed to be getting into port transportation and making schedules for ships and containers and all of these things, yet we can't get a simple calendar coordinated. I have concerns. So I'm going to leave it at that. But if I don't have it corrected, I'll have to start the new year off with the same discussion that I've been having for the last 6 months. So I would appreciate an effort being made to make this problem go away.
Loud and clear.
Ms. Marcotte? Presentation regarding federal update by David Vitter and Kyle Ruckert with Mercury Affairs, Commissioner Gui.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
We were requested to be given an update on the last year's activities and regarding Mercury Affairs. And with us today, we have both David Vitter and Kyle Ruckert to give us that update. Gentlemen, you're on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner, and all of the board. We appreciate our being able to be here. Thank you for all your work for the public. I'm David Vitter. This is Kyle Ruckert. We're the core of your federal government relations team. We've been honored to be working for you, focused primarily on federal government relations for a few years now. As you know, recently you passed a resolution which included cutting and/or moving the funds for our federal government relations work. So I wanted to come to address our work, and I believe there's going to be an effort to reinstate those funds, which obviously we would support, and we're really here to answer any questions you might have about this. If I could make some basic points, and then I'd love to answer any questions. Just by way of background, to remind you, under our contract, the board pays us $4,500 a month for a total, obviously, of $54,000 a year. That's a significant amount of money, and not trivializing that in any way, but I think it's a very reasonable fee. It's the lowest amount I charge any clients. And really, it was struck originally as part of a package deal when the parish was paying the same amount for us to do similar work on the parish side. As you know, several months back that ended, but we have nevertheless continued not only doing this work for the port, but whenever we can, to the greatest extent possible, we also follow up and bird dog priorities that many of you have highlighted, even if they're not technically within the port. Just as a for instance, I know Commissioner Roussel has an important issue with regard to the FEMA program that we've been bird dogging. We continue to do that. It looks good that that will be resolved whenever the next National Flood Insurance Program bill moves, but we're continuing to bird dog that. As another example, recently Commissioner Kognovich noted a need in his district regarding historic renovation and the need for perhaps federal grant monies. And we just located a grant opportunity that I sent him yesterday that should be a very good fit in that regard. So we'll continue to look after those individual priorities to the greatest extent we can. For those funds, I think we've proved very effective. We have given you a handout, it looks like this, which is sort of the top line highlights of our work in significant categories. I think all told, the story is one of very, very solid effectiveness. It includes helping garner $20 million for the port and the parish. We do plenty of other things besides try to go after federal funds, but that's just one important metric. And just taking that one metric alone, $20 million, when you consider the cost to the board, that's a return on investment of over 123 to 1. And as I said, we certainly do other things beyond procuring federal funds, working on core issues all the time. Just 2 days ago, we had an important call with the colonel in the New Orleans Core District trying to move important priorities of the port, et cetera. I think that's why just in July, you all honored us by extending our contract 2.5 years. And so, because of that, we do have a binding contract that still goes out 2.5 years. Now, as I understand it, the biggest reason articulated for cutting the funds or moving money in that resolution several weeks ago was to fund the ferry, which is obviously an important service to the public and an important priority for the parish. But let me just point out, I believe that resolution freed up to be moved to the parish about $2 million. And the cost to fund the ferry for a year is $1.5 million. So you could reinstate our funding and fully fund that level of ferry operations for the year. You could do both. Final point, right now is really the worst possible time to stop the federal government relations work we're doing. Why do I say that? Well, I say that because we've been working on a number of port and parish priorities, which are essentially on the 5-yard line. They're in the federal appropriations bills. They're in the WRDA bill, the Water Resources Bill, and those are all on the 5-yard line, but not passed into law. And so I really think this would be the worst possible time to stop that work, because if we're not at the table advocating for you when those things are finalized, you know what's going to happen. There are going to be plenty other folks looking for those dollars, looking to grab them, looking to move priorities. And that's what inevitably happens unless you're there actively bird dogging things. With that, let me just end by saying, as I understand it, there will be a resolution perhaps introduced today to be voted on in January to reinstate this funding. Obviously, we would encourage that. But we're mostly here to answer any questions about any of this as you consider that resolution. Be happy to answer any questions.
Madam Vice Chair, if I may, the staff has been totally and completely satisfied with the work that Senator Vitter and Kyle Ruckert bring to us. And I hope that the board sees it that way and we reinstate his contract and fund it.
Mr. Russo?
Yes. Someone is telling me that they're not hearing me. Is my mic on?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Now, Senator, as you know, when you obtained this contract, I was instrumental in bringing it to the table. And you're correct that I did have an issue with NFIP. However, the time has run out. It's not on.
Your microphone is on, Mr. Russo.
Well, it's not being portrayed through the YouTube, but let me put it that way. So if someone needs to give me a mic that's going to work.
I have the volume all the way up 100%.
Yeah, it says you have the floor.
You want to come sit here? Everything's indicating that it's on. It's just evidently not.
Just to continue, you are correct that I did have a problem with the NFIP several years ago. However, the time has run out. There's no longer need to pursue that issue because today we're adopting the flood maps that go into effect January the 15th. So any effort that is put forth, I appreciate it, but we don't need to do it anymore because we're going to adopt the entire parish flood maps and the partial adoption issue is over.
Okay. Just to clarify, the only reason it couldn't be addressed before this is that Congress has never passed a new NFIP bill. They've passed just extensions without any changes in policy. And so we were prepared to help address that as soon as they were ever going to pass a new bill. That simply hadn't happened.
I understand that, and I followed it very closely, and I understand that's correct. However, I just would point out, since you brought the issue up, that there's no longer an effort or need because it's history, it's past due. In our discussion, we talked about communication. You know, the most communication I've had from you is in the last week trying to renew this contract since we originally adopted this contract. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the direction we're going to go in, but if there's not an improvement in communication, I don't know if there's going to be a contract.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, there is a contract. It's binding for 2.5 years, but certainly I've been in communication because we'd like it funded rather than have a disagreement over that. Secondly, one of the first things I did in meeting all the council members was give everyone my personal cell number. We've made presentations to the full Board of Commissioners before. We've always been available to follow up and would be happy to do that on whatever schedule you would like and upon your request. Ordinarily, when we work for any client, we take week-to-week direction from sort of the management folks, which in this case would be Sandy and Paul, versus the policy board. Say it's a corporation. We're not dealing with the board of directors, every month. We're dealing with the management folks in the corporation, and then maybe annually, maybe semi-annually, we'd make a presentation to the board. Having said that, we are at your disposal for updates and briefings however you want and on whatever schedule and on the spur of the moment, and everybody has my cell number, so we would be happy to do that.
Well, while I appreciate your comments, I think the communication around here is lacking. And if you haven't picked that up by sitting in the audience for the last 10 minutes, then you haven't been listening either. So my comments are, I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm getting a clear message from you that we have a binding contract and you'll pursue the contract till its end, no matter whether the funding is reinstated or not. Is that correct?
I'm just stating the facts that in July, y'all extend the contract for 2.5 years.
And the question is that correct, my statement, that you will pursue the balance of the contract whether we fund it or not?
Look, I want to use all of my effort to advocate for the port and the parish. I don't want to waste effort on anything else. And so that's what I'm focused on 1,000%.
I'm just picking up from what your discussion is.
That's what I'm saying. I want to use all of my energy advocating for the port and the parish, particularly at a very critical time when things like the appropriations bills and the WRDA bill are on the 5-yard line, and we have a lot of priorities in those. So that's what I'm going to be focused on. And again, to go to your point of communication, we've been before the board before. We've briefed everyone before. We're at your beck and call, and we will adopt any sort of briefing schedule you suggest.
Well, this item will be discussed at the next meeting as well, so I'm not going to belabor it anymore today. But I expressed to you my concerns, and, the fact that you gave us your phone number. If we don't know what's going on, we can't call you and ask you. So I'm going to leave it at that until the next meeting. We'll have some more discussion, but thank you.
Well, y'all are always free to call and ask, and I'd welcome that. Any other questions or suggestions?
Mr. LaFrance?
Yes, due to the political environment that we have in Washington, D.C., do you think you can be effective by things being so partisan in Washington, D.C.? Do you think you can be effective?
We do think we can, and you have a handout that goes directly to that point. My firm, Mercury Public Affairs, is a completely bipartisan firm. So I have colleagues that I can call on that absolutely can be super effective whenever needed with the new incoming Biden administration and with the Democratic House. Give you, for instance, Barbara Boxer, someone I worked with in the U.S. Senate, is now a colleague at Mercury. She chaired the relevant committee for water resources for years and years. I was the top-ranking Republican. She's available to help work on these things. She's a personal friend of the president-elect from years of service together. Other examples, a guy named Clay Middleton is a former staffer of Congressman Jim Clyburn. So I'm sure you noticed he was instrumental in Biden's victory. And so Clay is very well placed. In fact, he's on leave from our firm now to serve in the Biden transition, but he's coming back. So that's another great example of a Democratic colleague I can call on. A lot of our work is through the Louisiana delegation. Kyle and I are particularly well placed dealing with those offices because a lot of the senior staff in those offices actually came from my office. So we have great contacts in all of those offices. So considering all of that, I think we're extremely well placed to deal with the new environment you're referencing. In fact, I think Mercury's bipartisan capabilities really set us apart from any other federal government affairs shop based in Louisiana.
Thank you.
Mr. Vitter, thank you very much for coming. You gave us some good information here on what you've accomplished for the port. I'm not sure where you stand with the board as a total of support, and I hope they do. But I think I can see some meetings coming up with some board members on where we're going to go with this, and we'll definitely let you know. And
Well, again, I'd be happy to meet either individually as or a group with anyone to talk about these issues before it's voted on. And more importantly, I'd be happy to adopt any sort of briefing schedule Commissioner Roussel would suggest or anyone would suggest. And then on an as-needed basis, apart from a regular schedule, we're always available to brief any member about any particular issues.
thank you very much. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Roussel?
I have one final question. Am I on? Am I on now? Yes. My final question is that, do you represent the Venice Port Complex?
Yes.
Do you represent any other entities in this area that benefits from the dredging?
No.
And I had expressed some concern among our members about the bipartisan that was referred to here. Did someone share that information with you about my concern to let you know that I was concerned?
Not specifically with your name attached. In one of my phone calls this week, I heard the issue come up. I don't think they referenced you, Commissioner Roussel. But I think I fully addressed that. And you have a handout, which it's a one-pager, it should be in front of you, which specifically lays out the democratic assets of my firm and why I think we can be super effective in the new federal environment we're going into.
Who was that phone call with?
Maybe, I'm guessing, but maybe Commissioner Kognovich mentioned it, and I'm not sure. One of your colleagues mentioned the issue, not with your name attached.
Well, I'm glad that they expressed it to you because I have those concerns too.
Okay.
And my real concern is that the fact that we have Cedric going into the White House, which makes me think that we should possibly realign with someone in the White House. So when the president presents his budget, we're already in the budget and don't have to fight to get in. And so that's the type of connection that I'm looking for.
We always do that. Whatever the administration, we always try to get in the president's budget, not just have to try to plus it up in Congress. So we're always doing that, whoever is involved. Under the new Biden administration, you're right. Congressman Richmond will be a key resource. I have a very good relationship with him. Kyle has a very good relationship with him and his staff. Some of those folks are joining him in the White House. So I think that avenue is absolutely open. With regard to the broader issue in terms of being able to lobby the administration, Democrats in Congress, I think what I said in that one-pager addressed it very directly and hopefully effectively, but I don't know if you have any questions following up on that.
No, I just, know the procedure of how I'd like to see things go. One other question would be, are you willing to reduce your contract to 1 year?
Look, we can discuss anything. We're open to any ideas. I don't want to commit to that right off the cuff because as it stands now, it's 2.5 years, but we're willing to discuss anything.
Well, 2.5 years and 1.5 years already gone.
No. It's 2.5 years from July, so it's about 2 years from now.
Right. You see, we have a provision in our charter which we disagree on around here about professional service contracts extending more than 2 years.
Okay, well, I wasn't aware of that, and I'm not the one who set the term, but I'm just telling you the facts. So it's about 2 years from now.
Right. So that's why I'm asking if it takes that to get the votes to refund the contract, I'm asking if you're willing to do that.
We're open to any discussion, including that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? The audience? Thank you, Mr. Vitter, appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. All right, Barb.
3A, financial report, budget to actual.
Good evening. All port commissioners have been provided a 2020 total budget report and detailed budget report with actual expenditures shown as of November 30th, 2020. As of November 30th, 2020, the port would have completed 91% of the year. Any expenditure categories with less than 9% remaining would yield immediate attention. Currently, we have none. Revenues with more than 9% remaining to be earned would yield immediate attention. Currently, our total revenues is at a 24% remaining balance. The port's staff has prepared 2020 budget amendments for introduction, and they will be voted on today. It's on the agenda and this is for the 2020 budget year. Our revenue amendments total $3,621,957, and that's a reduction. I would like to make note that $2,717,720 of that is federal funding for the WERDA project, and that funding has not been lost. It just the project has not started monetarily in 2020, so those revenues will be moved to 2021 budget. And there is our other large reduction was in the tariff fees. Those are being reduced about $1 million. Expenditure amendments total $334,054 in reductions or cuts. As I stated, none of the budget revenues at this time, with the exception of revenues, shall yield any immediate attention. We are monitoring our budget, our 2020 budget, to see how this year wraps up. As you all know, our tariff revenues are kind of behind by about 2 months due to arrival dates and the reporting procedures from facilities. So we are working with all of our facilities. The financial staff has put forward great effort over the last couple of weeks to make sure that we are in constant contact with the facilities to see if there's anything that we can do to help to get the reporting up, and in addition, collections as well. If there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Shimbrel. Any questions from the board? Audience? Okay, Ms. Marcotte.
The next item is item number 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Number 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions. Madam Vice Chair, we do have some.
Okay.
The following are for Commissioner Blink. An ordinance to amend and as amended, readopt ordinance number 20-80, which approved the correction to the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District 2020 manpower budget to reflect the position of marine diesel mechanic on pay grade 17 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing the director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to transfer ownership of a 2012 Ford F-250 utility truck to the Plaquemines Parish government for public use and benefit and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The following is for Commissioner Newberry. An ordinance authorizing the Executive Director, Maynard Sandy Sanders, to negotiate and enter into and provide funding for an agreement with DAR, Inc. to provide consulting, advisory, and lobbying services on behalf of the port at the state level for legislative, administrative, and regulatory issues, including capital outlay representation and other facilities of interest to the port and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend and is amended to approve the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District 2021 operating budget of revenue and expenditures and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Madam Vice Chair, that is it for the introductions.
Thank you.
6B, there are no items for 6A. 6B,
Withdrawn, please.
Yeah, withdrawn, sorry.
6C, A resolution adopting the amendments to the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District's Accounting Policy and Employee Handbook. Commissioner Blank.
All right, Commissioner Blank wants to move on his ordinances.
There are changes to it, Madam Vice Chair,
Okay.
to the attachments.
Are y'all handing that out? All right, I want to move on this resolution. Do I have a second?
Yes, with changes.
With the changes, sorry. Do we need to read the changes? Barb, do we need to read the changes?
Yes, ma'am, as soon as I get to it.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 1, they're removing in the title, general information regarding budget process, removing the word original. In the first paragraph, at the very end, it says budgets are to be retained at the council secretary's office, and they're inserting in Port's finance office. The next paragraph, on the second line, they're removing the words "the beginning" and adding some verbiage. It'll read, "For the current year, including beginning port fund balance, year-to-date actual receipts and revenues received, and estimates of all receipts and revenues to be received by the remainder of the year, estimated and actual revenues, removing itemized by source." Then the next line down, we're adding in the verbiage "itemized by department," and removing "itemized by agency, department, function, and other character," other financing sources and uses by source and use, both year-to-date actual and estimates for the remainder of the year. On the next line, we're adding, after the words actual and estimated, adding in the word net port fund, and removing the word fund and adding an S to balance to be balances. The next paragraph, second line, removing financial statements and then after budget to actual comparisons, adding the word monthly. The next paragraph, inserting after the executive director must advise, inserting Plaquemines Parish Council serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port in accordance with RS 39:1311 where applicable, and then removing council RS 1311 when board, and adding the word when.
Is it? I'm not
I
sure.
don't think so.
Okay. Well, if it's not necessary, then,
Not necessary.
because it's a lot.
There's a lot of changes, yes, ma'am.
Now you are.
Yes, these changes were all sent to everyone. We've been through it. For my part, I want to thank the women over there who sat down at the table and worked out these changes that we agreed on. And so I'm ready to move on.
All right, Mr. Black seconded the resolution. Do you have any questions from the board? From the audience? All right, let's vote.
Commissioner Roussel?
All right, it passes 8-1 with Mr. Blink absent. Ms. McCart?
6D, an ordinance to amend and as amended the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District 2020 operating budget of revenue and expenditures and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
All right, I'm going to move Mr. Blink's ordinance here. A second by Mr. Black. Any questions from the board?
Yes, one point earlier when Mr. Vitter was making his presentation, said we cut 2 million out of the budget. I think that we only cut about a $500,000 or so to get to where we needed, and the other $1.5 million that was there was already in the fund balance or so.
I think he may have been speaking of 2021's budget. These are amendments that
Oh,
are
yeah,
going
you're
to be
correct,
made to
right.
2020's budget.
Okay.
Okay, did you say, it says amendment to 2020, not 21 coming up, is that correct? Okay.
Correct. It's due to our port policy if revenues or expenditures or if there's a more than 5% variance, we need to amend it to reflect those changes, and these are the amendments.
Okay, thank you, Shimbrow. Any questions from anyone else? Any questions from the audience? All right, let's vote. All right, it passes 8-1, and Mr. Blink's absent. Ms. Marcotte?
E, a resolution authorizing and directing the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District's Executive Director Maynard Sandy Sanders to apply for a foreign trade zone designation for the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District from the Foreign Trade Zones Commission.
All right, this is also a resolution by Mr. Blink that he wants to move on today, so do I have a second? Second from Mr. Arbro. Any questions from the board? This is a resolution about the foreign trade zone. The port's trying to apply for it, and this gives an opportunity to seek benefits that the parish could gain from having a excuse me, a foreign trade zone. So do you have any questions, Mr. LaFrance?
Yes, why would we benefit from having a foreign trade zone? What is the pros, and can you tell me what is the cons?
Sure, and that is a good question. The benefit of having a foreign trade zone to our community is, even though we may lose inventory tax, and that's only if that business in the foreign trade zone is receiving a feedstock from a foreign country, and then they use it in the manufacturing of an item or what have you. And then they, in turn, take that manufactured item and export it, then we do not get the inventory tax on that item. However, if they are receiving a feedstock from a foreign country, it comes in, there is some value-added manufacturing to that product, and then it is shipped in the U.S. for retail, then they do not escape that inventory tax. So what do we get out of that as a community? Even though it might present itself that we lose the inventory tax on that, we're getting the jobs that company is hiring to produce that product. So we're putting folks to work, and they still pay property taxes on where they're located, but it's getting our citizens in our parish a job. So the con would be, there is a possibility that our assessor would not be able to assess the inventory tax. However, the plus to us is that we are putting people to work with jobs. Also, with us being the designee of the FTZ, our board remains in control. And when I say that, if we get a foreign trade zone, right now we have no candidate that is asking to be put into a foreign trade zone. Right now, we are simply going after the designation that we will have a foreign trade zone. In the event that we have a candidate, a business that says we want to apply for, be in your foreign trade zone, all the taxing authorities have a chop at it. a letter from each authority has to go up with that request to allow that business to be in the foreign trade zone. So this allows our community to have a say-so with, is that business going to be allowed in the FTZ or not? And at present, we don't have that, and we have had in the past companies that locate in our jurisdiction, and they're going under the skirt of a foreign trade zone with two other entities, one being the Port of South Louisiana and one being the Port of New Orleans. So I think another benefit of that is that you guys on the board and all the other taxing authorities are in control versus another port with their FTZ. Yes, sir, and that is a good question.
Mr. Russo?
Yes, one of the ones that you mentioned that are under, so to quote, skirt of somebody else's BP, ConocoPhillips. And in the original agreement that was signed, they agreed to pay the inventory tax. And so even though they were in a foreign trade zone under the skirt of someone else, the agreement said that they would pay that inventory tax. So I guess my next question would be, if we're not having any candidate anywhere, the boundaries of this foreign trade zone, what will they be?
When we apply for it, we're using the initial boundary as our parcel one. And we were advised that we have to own the property when you at least apply. And so it's a very long, arduous process. And when I say that, in May of 2016, the Port Board unanimously voted yes to apply for it. And we're just now getting it teed up to where it's going up to the Department of Commerce for approval. So it is a long process, and I would rather us and our taxing authorities to be in the driver's seat versus another foreign trade zone that is going to have a say-so over business that is going to apply in our jurisdiction for FTZ status. So it is a long process. We are, as Senator Bitter said, we're at the 5-yard line. It is moving towards the Department of Commerce. And by having that arrow in our quiver and getting that status, that FTZ status, then we'll be in charge of the say-so when a business says, hey, I'd like to be in the FTZ zone.
Well,
As far as the other, please, as far as the examples that you gave, I do not know about that. You're talking BP,
ConocoPhillips, yeah.
Yeah,
66.
the assessors here, do you know if they're?
Well, she's coming to the mic. My question was, are we just applying for parcel one?
That is the initial zone, yes, sir. And then if we have, like, say, something comes up in Venice-Port, we can make that subzone, but it'll be under our granted authority, our FTC status.
Now, as part of this process, I know that the legislation was passed last session. And so that's what was the delay for moving forward, although the attorney has done significant work, or I would say some work, up to about $7,000 worth on this issue. How much more do you think it's going to take to push this over the 5-yard line, the goal line
Yes, sir.
we're talking about?
This is it. And another part of that delay was we were looking for an entity to assist us, and they were asking a minimum of 50 plus a retainer, and that's why we balked. So our attorney, they have a FTC specialist in that firm that has assisted us at much less that cost. Belinda?
Back to the other question. Belinda Hazel, the assessor for Plaquemines Parish. I think you, Benny, and you were talking about the same tract of land. It was Alliance way back when, say ConocoPhillips, BP. And it does appear that, based on the documents that you sent, that at that time they had, and they paid the taxes. They didn't exempt the property taxes. And so that's one of the, you read me something today. Sandy, you had found something else. I had mentioned that to you. And you found a letter.
Right, and I'll read it, but that's when I called you back. I said I failed to mention this, but it stated, this letter would state, if nothing else, that the entity is aware that the FTZ inventory tax exemption has no objection. And then, excuse me. However, after PPHTD becomes a grantee, PPHTD will have to include such a letter when filing on the application on behalf of a company seeking to be included in the foreign trade zone. And PPHTD would need a letter from each affected taxing authority, the assessor, the school board, the sheriff's department, et al. A letter would have to go with that application when that particular business says, I want to get into your FTZ. So again, I would rather our folks have the say-so on that versus coming under the skirt of another board or another FTZ.
And I don't disagree. The reason I provided the information to the assessor's office was because to make sure that we weren't putting ourselves in a position that would exclude the inventory taxes that we are now collecting. So I provided her with the information that we're talking about to make sure that she could run those traps, and you did, and they are paying.
It looks like, yes. And right now, the port owns the land, so there's nothing on the roll for that track. So if this incentive of using this foreign trade zone works and somebody comes, we would have whatever improvements that they come up with, if they build a building or a shed or whatever, that would go on the roll. The one I'm bouncing off of and have to compare with is what I will always call the old AMAX site, which was just the yard that they used, and they laid out all that aluminum. So we didn't necessarily gain any property tax from that situation because the aluminum was exempt, and the other property, the buildings and the land was already on the roll. But in this case, with a government-owned property, if you get somebody in there, you're going to have something to put on the roll.
Only the improvements unless we do a PLT pilot.
I'm assuming that, yes, they would build their own improvements and they would go on the roll.
So it's an issue that we have to watch. That's all I'm saying is that,
agree.
and the reason I raised the issue is because I didn't want to lose the inventory tax. But
I
thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Koknovich?
You said we gotta own the property to get the foreign trade zone. So how can the Port of New Orleans and the Port of Southeastern New Orleans claim property and?
But they already have, they've been granted that authority. We are applying to be able to have a FTC. And when you make that initial application, the attorney advises you need to, the boundary needs to be something that you own.
But how does the Port of New Orleans and them get the ConocoPhillips refinery to have them claim it? They don't own no property in Plaquemines Parish.
Yeah, go ahead.
The law allows them to do that.
Yeah, the law, yeah, so to be clear, when we were looking at deciding what would be the quote magnet site, which you need one site to dedicate when you apply, you can't just apply and not have any site that you're looking at for FTZ. You can have multiple sites, and they don't have to, the multiple sites as they come up don't have to be owned by a port. However, it was recommended that for this to successfully go through, that if we have a site that we own, it's best if we put that site in as the initial magnet site. And then as businesses come along that maybe want to operate in any other part of the parish and not our site, we can allow for that private site to be under the FTZ. So we're just trying to get it across the goal line. Initially, our hope was that possibly we could use a site down the road, preferably in the Venice area, to be a site. And we looked at a couple of particular sites as an opportunity. But again, the attorneys and those who are recommending what's the best way to get this at least passed initially for the first magnet site would be the parcel one. Now, if, for example, if something happens where a business would like to operate in the Venice area, anywhere down the road, anywhere up the road, and it's a private site, and they need that foreign trade zone to have that competitive advantage or attractive to really operate here, we can then allow that site to be a zone. Right, subzone. So the option is there. We're just trying to get the grantee first.
So if a company came and was putting their site in New Orleans, we could give them the foreign trade zone.
Well, that's under the Port of New Orleans. The reason why the Port of New Orleans and the Port of South Louisiana can have a foreign trade subzone in Plaquemines is because Plaquemines doesn't have a foreign trade zone. So the moment that if this board approves the application or authorizing and directing us to go apply, then any foreign trade subzone that is in the jurisdiction of the port is now under the authority of the grantor, which is the Port of Plaquemines. Because there is no FTZ in Plaquemines, Port of New Orleans, Port of South Louisiana can award a subzone in Plaquemines without any say-so from any person on this board, the assessor, or anyone else in the parish. So our hope is that we can get this applied, approved, and now we have the voice of our board to be able to determine who gets a foreign trade zone approval in our jurisdiction.
It's our desk.
All right, thank you.
I think what we have to remember here with the foreign trade zone, we have such a big advantage applying for this. It attracts the industry and a lot of jobs.
Right. And Madam Chair, I'd just like to remind everyone there's over 250 foreign trade zones in the United States and over 400 zones. There are 6 port foreign trade zones in Louisiana. I believe there's 3 other that are non-port. It's an airport. I think the other 2 are airports. And so we're just simply trying to get another arrow in the quiver for Plaquemines Port.
Okay, anyone else from the board? Any comments from the audience? All right, let's vote.
Councilmember Bartholomew? Councilmember Bartholomew? Are you not voting, Councilmember Bartholomew? Okay.
All right, it passed 7-0 with Mr. Blink not voting and Mr. Black. All right, Ms. Marcotte.
F, a resolution authorizing Maynard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to extend the current agreement for professional services with Dwyer, Cambry, and Suffern for the provision of legal counsel and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Is this an amendment? All right, we have an amendment to this. This is Mr. Blink's resolution. Amendment to the contract of Dwyer, Cambry, and Suffern.
Madam Vice Chair, would you like me to read the changes?
Just the preamble, I guess.
Preamble is already read.
Okay. So nothing's changed there?
Not on the resolution, on the contract.
Is that necessary, Mr.? Is that necessary? Should she change?
If everybody's good with it.
We have no idea what it is.
All right, let's go ahead and read it.
On the contract in the first paragraph, we had to change the dates to be from the 19th day of December 2019 to the 10th day of December 2020, and then change the effective date as of January 1st, 2020 to be January 1st, 2021. The resolution number that was cited in the original contract was 19-335. That has been removed with a blank for the new one. Under Section 1, Scope of Services, on line 19, we're adding in the language, as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, and removing, and the port and any and all in. On line 21, we're removing the word the. On line 22, we're removing during Plaquemines Parish Council meetings. On page 2, we're adding the following language on line 31 through 33. All litigation shall be approved by the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District prior to such actions being taken. In section 2, on line 49, we're removing the word application and inserting the word applicable. On page 3, we're changing the dollar amount on lines 72 and 73 from $250,000 to $125,000. On page 4, we're changing the date to read from January 1st, 2020 to reflect January 1st, 2021, and ending on December 31st, 2021 versus 2020. On page 5, line 120 and 121, we're removing the language, without the written consent of the port, which consent shall not be unreasonably withheld, conditioned, or delayed. And Madam Chair, Vice Chair, that's it for the changes.
1 second, miss. Do y'all have a copy? Okay. Page 4. If the board looks on page 4, number 88, it says the agreement is for 12 months, beginning January 1st, 2021, and ending December 31st, 2021. So I was just trying to clarify how long,
1 year.
1 year.
for 1 year, so.
Yeah, we got,
Okay.
we're good.
Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Vice Chairman, we're good.
Oh, I need a second. All right, we're going to move with this, and do I get a second? A second by Mr. Arbrough. All right, any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? All right, let's vote. All right, it passed 8-0. Mr. Black is absent. All right, Ms. Marcotte.
G, an ordinance adopting the original operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021, and ending December 31st, 2021, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
All right, this is offered by Mr. Blink. This is for the 2021 operating budget, to approve it, I believe. And do I get a second? Oh, agenda. You want a second? Did you second it? I knew you. Anybody gonna give me a second? I'll second. Okay, you second. Mr. Russo seconded. It's the approval of the 2021 budget. All right, Mr. Kognovich.
Shouldn't it say the revised budget instead of the original? Oh,
I think I need legal advice on that.
The initial budget that is presented to you all is a proposed budget. We have budget hearings on that proposed budget. And then any amendments that are presented at the budget hearing is then made to the proposed budget, which becomes the original adopted budget. The revised budget is basically the budget we will work with throughout the year if other amendments are being made to it. So this is the original budget that you will adopt to begin the year, and then any other changes made to that original becomes the revised budget.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kognovich, for clarifying that. And thank you, Shimbrell. Any other questions? All right, let's vote. Audience, any questions about the original budget, proposed budget for the port? All right. Sorry, I thought I did. All right, we have a verbal yes from Dr. Gui.
No.
No, oh, I'm sorry. I thought he didn't vote, I'm sorry. Okay, so it's 7-1, with a no from Dr. Gui and no voting from Mr. Arbo. Sorry about that.
H, an ordinance adopting the original capital improvements budget for the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District for the 5-year period beginning January 1st, 2021, and ending December 31st, 2025, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
All right, this is what is this? All right, this is another ordinance by Mr. Blink on the original capital improvement budget. Do I have a second? All right, so Mr. Blink's going to offer it. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Second by Newberry. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? All right, let's vote. Oh, come on, state your name.
Robert Tyler on there, I'd just like to know what's the amount of the budget.
The amount for the 2021 capital improvement budget included the $2,717,720 for the WERDA funding, the WERDA project dredging, that's going to begin. That was the only thing we had new. There is a couple of projects that rolled over from previous years. I don't have that exact figure, but I do know just for 2021, that was the only thing that was updated. It's $2,717,720. And that's for a dredging project.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Russo?
This is a point of clarification. That's not the total, that's just the dredging part of it for capital improvement. That's not the operating budget either.
Yes, that's only capital improvement budget.
A part of the capital improvement.
That's right. That's only what's new for 2021. And there was 2 projects that rolled over from previous years because it's a 5-year capital improvement.
Can you state those for him, please?
The 2 projects is the B3 relocation project and our culvert maintenance project. I can't state the exact amount what will roll over into 2021 until the 2020 year is completed. So there's an estimate that's located in the 5-year capital improvement. You can see what we spent in the previous years. I don't have that figure off top of my head, but it is available on our website, and you can see what has originally been appropriated for those 2 projects and what has been previously spent, but the exact rollover amount I don't have just yet.
So we're voting on the new original capital improvement budget for 2021. That's the 2.7 something for the word. Is that correct?
Correct.
Any other questions? Mr. Russo? No. Okay. All right. All right, then let's vote. All right, we got a 9-0, passed 9-0. All right, Ms. Marcotte.
Under item 7, there are no introductions of resolutions where suspension is being sought. Number 8, approval of the November 12, 2020 meeting minutes.
All right, we have a second by Mr. LaFrance. All right, let's vote.
Councilmember Blank and Councilmember Bailey.
All right, it passes 9-0.
Move to adjourn, Ms. Chandler?
The next one's to adjourn, huh? All right, second by Mr. Kognovich. It was offered by Dr. Gui. All right, it passed 9-0. I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and, oh, and we end at 4:20.